India is proud to bring together the world through a universe of opportunities in the semiconductor.
Semiconductors are indispensable and critical components to most forms of modern technology across many industries.
There is no digital without chips.
Semiconductors, tiny fragments of silicon that power our lives.
The United States has to lead the world in producing these advanced chips, and this law makes sure that we will.
The government of India has approved the Semicon India program, an incentive outlay of $10 billion.
सेमीकंडक्टर इंडस्ट्री के लिए एक अच्छा एनर्जी कंडक्टर बनने के लिए हर चेकबॉक्स को टिक रहा.
Semiconductors are the silent enablers of
the 21st century oil. Whoever controls them will control.
इंडस्ट्री एक फाउंडेशनल इंडस्ट्री. सेमीकंडक्टर का उपयोग आज प्लेन से लेके ट्रेन से लेके कार.
Hello everyone. As you all should be aware that in today's digital world, semiconductor chips are the heart and brain of all modern electronic products. That is why these semiconductor chips are the integral part of almost all the modern electronic devices such as cars, phones, household gadgets and even essential medical devices. Hence, we can imagine its importance that these semiconductor chips are essential to almost all the sectors of the economy, including aerospace, automobiles, communication, clean energy and information technology, and medical devices.
Microchip can take up to 26 weeks to make. In its as many as 100 layers, billions of transistors are packed into an area about the size of a fingernail. They're the brains behind almost everything we use in our increasingly electronic. The process begins with silicon-rich sand. Why silicon? Silicon is a semiconductor. It's the sweet spot between an insulator and a pure conductor. That means its properties such as its conductivity can be altered by adding impurities or doping to meet the needs of different electronic devices. This also allows us to control the electrical signals that pass through. Silicon is also abundant. It's one of the 10 most common elements found on.
Through this we can understand that these are the foundation of almost all the modern electronic devices and they are driving the next phase of digital transformation under the fourth industrial revolution. But its significance may lead to the major problems in the world because these chips are in very high demand with low supply creates global chip shortages and resulting in low growth in the economy. Let's take an example. During the COVID-19 pandemic, many electronic devices manufacturing companies had shut down their production houses, including automobile sectors, due to shortages of semiconductors. But these problems are not only related to the production houses, rather than they are also creating the global conflicts as well, such as US-China tensions due to Taiwan issues in the South China Sea, and also the trade war between these two countries.
China requires everyone on the field operating as a whole of government and working in a bipartisan way with that.
This is a bad day for President Xi and the Chinese Communist Party. The slumbering giant that is America has finally awakened to the challenge that we face from the People's Republic of China, their aggressive posture in the region, and the potential they would have of cutting off our access to advanced semiconductors.
On the global level, according to the Bloomberg report, the global semiconductor market was valued at $527 billion in 2021 and is projected to grow to $1,380 billion by 2029. So, through this data, you can point out that how big is semiconductor industry at the global level, and the major global semiconductor producers are China, South Korea, Japan, Taiwan, and the United States. However, each of these countries are also a large chip importers as well. But the China was deemed to be the world's top exporter of semiconductors, followed by Taiwan, Singapore, Malaysia, and South Korea. And the United States was at 6th in the global export ranking. But the US still leads the world in leading edge manufacturing design and research. On the other hand, Taiwan is still the world's leader in terms of raw semiconductor manufacturing. Here you can see on the screen world's top semiconductor producers company, and the one thing you should be noted here that majorly these companies are from the United States, Taiwan and the South Korea. So far, all such things have been going well since the last 3 to 4 decades. But the question comes, what has happened in recent times due to which all major countries, including the United States, are in panic mode? Well, the answer is understood by an example. During the COVID-19 pandemic, world saw biggest shortages of semiconductor chips, due to which many major companies incurred losses, and the geopolitical tensions between the USA and China is also clearly visible.
台湾是中国，台湾更是被外人。
It's not in our interest to provide technology to China that could be used against us, and at a time when it's engaged in a buildup of its nuclear weapons program in a very opaque.
Because of growing China aggression in the South China Sea and possibility of Taiwan invasion, which may lead to supply chain disruption, due to which 92% of all semiconductor manufacturing in the world may be get affected. That is why USA is desperately want to be self-reliant in this sector, and for this it has enacted CHIPS Act.
The United States has to lead the world in producing these advanced chips. And this law makes sure that we will. United States of America, a singular place of possibilities. I'm not going to go sign the Chips and Science Act. And once again, I promise you, we're leading the world again for the next decades. Thank you.
By signing the CHIPS and Science Act, Joe Biden gave priority to protecting American interests.
Got it.
Reducing costs, creating jobs, and countering China are becoming key features of Washington's trade.
We're going to make sure the supply chain for America begins in America. That's why we came together to pass the bipartisan CHIPS and Science Act.
This is really the crowning jewel in the Biden policy crown.
So what's behind the CHIPS Act is an attempt to protect the economic security of the U.S. far into the future.
The whole CHIPS Act is $52.7 billion. $39 billion is for grants. There's also an investment tax credit on top of this, which gives a 25% tax credit off of any fab that's constructed or improved.
But the USA is also exploring other options regarding supply chain resilience with its friendly nations like India, Europe, Japan.
To sign an agreement with India for the joint development of the semiconductor ecosystem.
India's growth in the semiconductor industry is now. This is India.
That is why leading American semiconductor companies have made a significant investments to support India's semiconductor mission, marking the beginning of a new era of collaboration innovation. And the partnership between India and the United States aims to strengthen semiconductor supply chain and also establishing a collaborative mechanism between the two governments to enhance the resilience and diversification of semiconductor supply chain.
Semiconductor facility in India. The US Applied Materials has announced new semiconductor center in India. The training programs are for 60,000 engineers are also on the cards. Joint Indo-US mechanism on artificial intelligence is also going to be set up. The arrangement on artificial intelligence and quantum tech to be
artificial intelligence, semiconductors, space, quantum और टेलीकॉम जैसे क्षेत्रों में अपना सहयोग बढ़ाकर हम एक मजबूत और फ्यूचरिस्टिक साझेदारी की रचना कर रहे हैं। अमेरिका की माइक्रोन, गूगल तथा अप्लाइड मटेरियल जैसी कंपनियों द्वारा भारत में निवेश करने का निर्णय इस फ्यूचरिस्टिक साझेदारी का
due to which a massive India-specific investment plan announced by Micron Technology, one of the world's largest chip makers, shows that India is going to be the next important location for semiconductor manufacturers. For this, Micron Technology has announced an investment of over $800 million to construct a new semiconductor assembly and test facility in Gujarat state, and the facility is expected to significantly reshape India's semiconductor landscape while creating numerous high-tech and construction jobs.
American semiconductor giant called Micron, and they've started setting up a $2.75 billion facility.
Through this, we can understand that In the upcoming decades, semiconductor industry will be going to play the same role as oil has been playing in the past decades.
India starts to flex its muscles in the global semiconductor.
India is proud to bring together the world to a universe of opportunities in the semiconductor sector. Welcome to Semicon India 2022, catalyzing India's semiconductor ecosystem.
As an Indian, we should be aware that where India stands currently. So the Indian semiconductor market was valued at approximately $23.3 billion and is projected to reach $80 billion by 2026 and $110 billion by 2030. With this, India currently with over 90% being imported and therefore significant external dependence for the Indian chip consumers, and the countries which are exporting semiconductor chip to India including China, Taiwan, Korea, USA and Japan. But the main reason for the growing the demand of semiconductor has been driven by many factors such as widespread adoption of 5G technology and government persistent efforts towards the digitalization and growing the popularity of cryptocurrency mining. Considering the continuous rise in demand for semiconductor in India with its population of over 1.4 billion and a robust education system has the potential to become a talent powerhouse in semiconductor industry and will also help to alleviate the acute shortages of skilled professionals. That is why, to further support the semiconductor research and development in India, Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology has announced a $10 billion under the Indian Semiconductor Mission.
Is to make India, in a sense, in terms of technology and especially in terms of semiconductor technology, to make us actually become a
large telecom equipment exporter, a very competitive talent pool, good talent pool, about 52,000 semiconductor engineers working in the country.
देश में आज एक तरफ इनोवेशन का जुनून है तो दूसरी तरफ इनोवेशन को तेजी से एडप्ट करने का जज्बा भी है और इसलिए डिजिटल इंडिया भारत का संकल्प है। डिजिटल इंडिया आत्मनिर्भर भारत की साधना है। डिजिटल इंडिया 21वीं सदी में सशक्त होते भारत का एक जयगो।
Government of India has initiated various schemes to make India global semiconductor manufacturing hub. In 2021, India announced its roughly $10 billion production-linked incentive schemes to encourage semiconductor and display manufacturing in the country.
PLI स्कीम से जुड़ी इन योजनाओं के लिए करीब 2 लाख करोड़ रुपए का प्रावधान किया गया है। प्रोडक्शन का औसतन 5% इंसेंटिव के रूप में दिया गया है, यानी सिर्फ PLI स्कीम के द्वारा ही आने वाले 5 सालों में लगभग $520 बिलियन का 520 बिलियन का प्रोडक्शन भारत में होने का।
In the same year 2021, Ministry of Information and Technology also launched the Design Linked Incentive Scheme to nurture at least 20 domestic companies involved in the semiconductor design and facilitate them to achieve a turnover of more than 1500 crores in the next upcoming 5 years. India's semiconductor mission was also launched in 2021 with a total financial outlay of Rs 76,000 crores as a part of the comprehensive program for the development of sustainable and display ecosystem in the country.
The Centre hailed Vedanta and Foxconn semiconductor manufacturing plant in Gujarat as a landmark, and even Foxconn
for Narendra Modi's Made in India campaign. But now Foxconn is pulling out of an almost $20 billion deal to build a chip-making plant with Indian mining conglomerate Vedanta. Now, the move comes less than a year after both companies announced their plans to build a factory in Gujarat. That's the home state of Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Now, the government says Foxconn's U-turn won't affect its chip-making ambitions, but analysts are calling it a setback for India's tech.
manufacturer Foxconn has said it has decided to pull out of the semiconductor joint venture 1.5 lakh crore rupees with Indian conglomerate Vedanta. Foxconn said it is working to remove the Foxconn name from what is now a fully owned entity of Vedanta. This comes 3 years after Vedanta took over the Foxconn chip joint venture from its holding company. Foxconn's contention is over Vedanta buying the chip business of its sister company Twin Star Tech, which was earlier a separate party in the joint venture. Now remember, this deal was signed in September last year and was a major one for India's semiconductor program, with a plant planned in Prime Minister Modi's home state Gujarat. So it was seen as a major investment in the state. But Vedanta has said it will continue with its semiconductor project and has lined up other partners for the same. Union IT Minister Ashwini Vaishnav told NDTV that Foxconn pulling out will have no impact on India's semiconductors.
Despite various government initiatives, India is still facing major challenges in fulfilling its dream, that are to make semiconductor chip. You need a cutting-edge technology. With this, semiconductor and display manufacturing is a very complex and technology-intensive sector involving huge capital investments, high risk, long gestation and payback periods, and rapid changes in technology, which also requires significant and sustained investments. And the other challenges are minimum fiscal support from the government and lack of fabrication capacities. Hence, you people can imagine that India has a decent design talent, but it never built up chip fab capacities until now. With the ISRO and the DRDO have their respective fab foundries, but they are primarily for their own requirements and are also not very sophisticated as the latest in the world. With this, India has only one old fab which is located in Mohali, Punjab. And lastly, from the resources point of view, the major challenge is that chip fabs are also very thirsty units, requiring millions of liters of clean water and extremely stable and regular power supply.
India's electronics manufacturing is expected to exceed $300 billion by 2025-26. And demand for semiconductors to be $80 billion by that time and $110 billion by 2030. India's semiconductor demand will also be driven by its focus on the future of automotive, mobility and communication, 5G, 6G and compute.
On the way forward, the question comes what we should do to attract more investments in this sector. So the favorable trade policies are critical for building a plurilateral semiconductor ecosystem, and India must also improve research and development in this sector where it is currently lacking. And there is a need for the Indian government to connect related industries in India to create the chip manufacturing ecosystem. For this, national capabilities needs to be enhanced. Lastly and foremost, India should collaborate with countries such as Taiwan, Japan, Korea, USA and other technologically advanced friendly nations to promote domestic manufacturing and reduce import dependency in semiconductor sector. Now that's all for today's episode. Do subscribe the channel and hit the bell icon.